Welcome. I'm back. This segment, I'm talking about spirituality, but from a different aspect. The aspect of spirituality I'm going to talk about is more, it's not really spiritual, but it has to do with the spiritual community. And in a sense, it's a little bit of advice, I would say, right? One thing I observed is that as I go into different subjects, some people have resisted. And that's fine because I actually surprised as many of you stood on. Like the thing that surprised me is that as many of you stood on as you have. And the reason why that surprises me because it's like anything else. You talk about plumbing and you spoke about plumbing for a long time and you start talking about fishing, you expect people to either rebel or leave, right? Or both. So for the majority of people they haven't left. So that's been a little surprising, which I thank you for that for sure. But even though they haven't, you guys haven't left, there's a large part of you, I would say about 30 to 40% of you, that's resisting in the sense that you're waiting for me to come back to the old info. And I can say that's not going to happen. And in a way, when I look at it, I'm put like this. Your responses to that information is forcing, it's kind of like making me happy that I'm not going back to the old information. Why? It's because I think a lot of you guys see the one problem with how spirituality is constructed right now, right? And not even spirituality, the spirituality that's been presented to you guys, right? Meaning, we exist in a world where it's a 24/7 news cycle because of the internet, because of everything from smartphones to TVs that connect to the net to the globalized empire that we currently live in. It's a very dangerous time because, in a lot of ways, things happen so fast. And you can look at it and you can tell, even if you look at business, for example. If a company wants to stay in business, right? How do they stay in business? Like, especially if they're a big time company. And not just really stay in business, but when they want to run their markets, right? There's a trend that's going on now where you see a lot of companies are wanting to become bigger and they want to go into different markets where they may not have been going before. So, for instance, you see Amazon now delivering food, Amazon Fresh, right? And they'll be like, you'll be like, what's Amazon doing delivering food? I thought that was books. But so many people get things at Amazon that have nothing to do with books anymore. And Amazon took their product and expanded into different areas and became a superpower. And in a way, a lot of times I bring that up as an example because that's how real spirituality is. See, a lot of people are used to escapism type of spirituality, and that spirituality is kind of productive. That spirituality helps make you feel better, right? That type of spirituality makes you feel better, but after a certain point, it becomes counterproductive. And in a way, you become where spirituality is supposed to be something that you take that's supposed to better your life at all levels, whether it's financial, whether it's your confidence among people, like you're supposed to be able to be a leader and whatever your field is. That's what true spirituality is. And for a lot of people, that is not the case per se, right? Because of escapism is a type of spirituality that you run to because the world has conquered you. And it's okay, the world is tough. Living in the matrix is really rough. There's no question about that for everyone. Whether you're rich or poor, whether you're middle class, whether you're black, whether you're white, whether you're a woman, whether you're gay, whether you're straight, everyone has, it gets affected by living in the matrix. Now, some people may not be aware of that, right? So you could be a person who's rich and, you may think you live in the world, like you live in the dream, and you are to some extent, but you're still living an imbalanced life. Real balance is about both. It's about being able to measure it and being balanced in both yin and yang. So both the spirit and both the physical. So if you're all physical, like I just described, a person who might be rich and totally a selfish person, maybe manipulative person, maybe accumulating wealth off the hardship of others and not rewarding them, that's actually obviously counterproductive. But at the same hand, if you're a person who's spiritual, who, is only spiritual, where, you go to the East and sometimes people, sometimes some of the masses be struggling. Like sometimes you go to certain parts of India and you see some people doing magic tricks for money. If that makes any sense. Now, of course, people will say, well, those are charlatans. They may not be necessarily real, but that happens when you're imbalanced, to be honest. So many people talk about things like alchemy, but they didn't really realize changing lead into gold was big, not just because gold gave you wealth, but changing lead into gold was big because it showed that basically internally all your systems were fired up And when all these systems are fired up, you could transmutate the physical. So the physical realm was originally meant to be, I guess, a higher, like a unique expression. I wouldn't say higher, but a unique expression of the physical realm. So, you know, when they say thy kingdom come on earth as is in heaven, thy kingdom come on earth as is in heaven meant bringing heaven to earth. That's spirituality. So the earth was supposed to be, or the physical was supposed to be a place that you can express the physical in many different ways. I'm sorry, express the spiritual in many different ways, in unique ways that could only be done in a place or realm where gravity is dominant, which is the physical. So when you're truly absorbing spiritual information, and when true spirituality is expanding your consciousness, you wouldn't run from the matrix. You wouldn't, in fact, you could be the person who's beat up from the matrix, like the matrix beats you up. And then what happens? The spirit comes in and transforms you, and that's what they mean by changing lead into gold. Even if you don't go all the way to gold, you might go to copper, right? If gold's the crown chakra and copper is the heart chakra, hey man, copper's not bad. You can make some money off copper. You gotta have a lot of it, but you can still make a little money off copper. So in a lot of ways, sometimes that's what true spirituality is. And so many people, spiritual people, don't realize that once you practice a real legitimate spiritual routine, your intellect goes up, right? Your patience goes up, your understanding goes up. Most importantly, even the ability that you have to connect to different life forms in your environment. See, this is why the physical is very important. If we take the story of Noah's Ark, and God is like, listen, you know, you need to have two of each animal, right? I mean, there's many different ways to decode that, but it's actually in a sense because animals are related to us. Human beings are a type of animal, right? It's an animal that just has spiritual potential. You learn a lot from observing animals, from observing nature. And it's too many times when I talk to people, nature is the furthest thing from their minds. And they don't really realize that nature is actually the most uncorrupted version of the spirit in the physical. People could say whatever you want, but the water, the soil, the sun, microscopic life forms, atoms, reptiles, mammals, angiosperms is plants, geosperms, like those are actually ferns, mosses, algae. Those are actually the highest expression of the spirit when you're not transformed yet. Meaning, if you're gonna see higher, that's gonna be when your consciousness expands and you're able to decode abstract concepts. When you can't decode abstract concepts, there's no higher essence than nature. And in a sense, if you're practicing a type of escapism type of spirituality, right, you're not gonna get that. Even it was a video I did on martial arts. I think it was martial arts and boxing, right? I did a video on it, and it was an individual, really cool dude. He asked, "How come, you know, people?" Like he said, I think he said in the video, it was a comment in the video that he said boxing was an art, or martial arts was an art, and somebody said, "No, it's so violent." Again, that's the problem with the spiritual community. Don't make any mistake about it. When you were just a sperm cell, you competed with how many sperms did your father shoot in your mom? I don't know, hundreds of millions, right? You competed with hundreds of millions of your brothers or your sisters, however you want to look at it, and you won. And when you entered your mom's body was the one who killed the rest of your brethren, right? So you came in war. People don't really realize that. When you first came in, when you were a sperm cell, you came into the woman's body, it was war. In the physical realm, war or just competition is not something you run from. Competition is not something that, as long as it stays honorable, is cool. So most people don't realize when you talk about something's too violent, you probably were picked on. Let's keep it real. We live in a society that people use guns now, right? Why? In the old days, if you take guns, not 1,000 years ago, but 2,000 years ago, and ask a real warrior, yes, the regular person, the regular king might say, yeah, the gun can make war quick. They would love it. But if you ask a warrior, guns may be a crude weapon because it doesn't necessarily mean you're a warrior. It doesn't necessarily mean you're tough. So you look at society, and there's ways you read society. If guns are the dominant essence of society, for the most part, unless you're living in certain areas, Chicago, certain parts of St. Louis, unless you're living in certain areas, the average person, for the most part, it's less violent, especially in Western society. When I say less violent, meaning the average person, yeah, it's less violent in the sense that there's only a certain level of violence they could stomach. So a lot of times criminals run rampant because society itself is soft. One of the reasons why, I'm not a person who's a big fan of gun controls, because I think if everyone had guns, you would you would have less crime. There's no way you can convince me otherwise. Part of the reason why people do crimes is because there's no repercussion, because half the people are not armed, half the people are not into war. So when a person knows you're not into war, they'll pick on you. You would attack that person. There's no question about it. So in a sense, when you look at it, martial arts was a part of spirituality. Because the person who asked me about the example, I know when he said it, he was getting into the softer martial arts, the martial arts that invoke more of the inner energy. And it's interesting because this is where you need balance. So you say, what do you mean? Well, for the spiritual community, because they're really too spiritual, right? I wouldn't advocate a person who's in balance. All they want to do is get spiritual. First, learn Tai Chi, Gikong, or certain types of yoga. I want to learn that. I wouldn't advocate that at first. Why? Because they would need a hard style martial art to bring them back down to earth. For me, I got no problem. If I got the time to meditate an hour, I don't got no time. I don't have no problem with that. It's really cool. I don't have no problem reading a spiritual book. I don't have no problem talking about spiritual topics. But I also got no problem putting my foot in someone's ass if it needs to be done. And guess what? I hadn't had to have a fight in years. I can't remember the last time I got in a fist fight. And yes, in the last 10, 12 years, I've still been in environments occasionally that a fist fight could happen. And I can't even remember it coming close for the most part. Why? Because your energy changes. People's subconscious minds see a confidence in you that eventually you wouldn't really get tested as much. They always say a true man of peace is ready for war. That's why the first martial artists were spiritual. So sometimes, yes, a spiritual person who wants to go to the energetic martial arts is still going in the right direction. But especially, in my opinion, if they're young, they should learn a hard art first, then learn the spiritual art second. Especially when you get older. When you get older, it's more about being flexible. So a lot of the more softer arts would come in as your body needs to stay flexible, and it's kind of like exercise to keep you in the flexible stage. If that happens, that hard art, soft art will perfectly balance that person out. And then if they're practicing a real type of spiritual system, bada bang, bada boom. And then that's even the reason why arts and science comes in, because when I talk about art sometimes, science fiction sometimes, again, people resist. But in a lot of ways, the true science fiction or true art was teaching the person to understand abstract concepts. If you don't understand abstract concepts, you're not going to understand spiritual concepts, because the highest spiritual concepts are abstract. This is why when you get to a certain level, you start hearing when they say it's a miracle when someone makes it to a certain stage. Because so many people think making it is just sounding deep. Making it just living a theory, meaning you could theorize, it's like this when you die, it's like this when you die, it's like this when you die. But the real power is when you could take 4 or 5 people, or you guys are in the same spiritual state. You guys go to sleep, you wake up, you're perfectly in control of your astral. You see the astral environment, and then all 5 of you guys, for the most part, agree what you saw. You say, well, it's like if I go to New York, if I go to St. Louis, I walk down a certain street, yes, certain people might notice certain things differently, especially on the astral, because there's more possibilities. But there should be certain things that's common ground. But we don't get that because there's very few people, and that's not even considered high spirituality. Most people don't realize remembering everything in the astral projecting it's not even close to the highest level of spirituality. But we can't even get to that threshold because everyone wants to be spooky. And it's just interesting when I put out certain videos and I see people's responses, I measure the energetic responses. It makes me see like, whoa, that purely spiritual SK is not coming back, because that stuff, if you don't balance it, does more harm than good. So I hope you heed my advice. Nothing wrong with the physical. Remember, the physical and the spiritual nurture each other. The physical can't exist without the spiritual, and the physical gives the spiritual new possibilities that can come in that cannot be done without a place where gravity is dominant. So I hope that helps. Till next time, peace.